Posse pals, it is the Presence Posse presenting Presence and Performance this Monday. And I have with me Dr. Fred Blum. I'm Miriam Siegel, and we are hoping, beyond all hope, to get Bobby Cobb on the line as well. He's having some technical difficulties, as we do sometimes. So, to get us started, presence and performance is the topic of the day. And Bobby and I were having a quick chat earlier in the week about, no, it was you and me, Fred, wasn't it? About what's performance and what do we
Yeah,
mean
we
by
were we were
performance.
joking around a little bit at the
Yeah,
time.
we were joking around a little bit because performance, um, I can see it in, just to make it easy, two different ways. One is like the execution of something, and then the other is the role. The
Performative.
Yes, performative. That's very good. I use that as well. So, for people who aren't familiar with that term, it's like being in a role where you're performing yourself rather than actually being yourself, to put it that way. Uh, and then something completely different, which is executing something. And it's interesting then because there's the being doing, which is what I'll often say, where you're doing from being and not just doing from doing, which can also be
Mhm.
doing from performative, doing from the performative. Yeah. Now
Yeah,
that everybody's confused.
yeah. Well, imagine what it's like in our heads. Um,
Do
but uh,
you want to add anything there?
no, I think I'll let that one just hang in space. But the idea of performance, I mean, I like frameworks, and so uh, pretty much everything we talk about can fit in the frameworks, different frameworks, right? We could be talking about, you know, being slash presence slash what I might call true self or something, right? Versus ego, doing, uh performative, all these things. So I like to look for where things are the same, where they all begin to fit together, because for me that's less confusing, you know so, like, for example, I often use these days a four quadrant model. I may have mentioned this on the last podcast, uh, where quadrant one, which is bottom left, is the basic, life happens to me in quadrant one. So we call that the victim. And victims feel powerless, they feel like they don't have much agency. So there's certainly not a lot of being in quadrant one. And there may not even be a lot of doing. I mean, there's doing, like scrambling around, but there's probably not a lot of, what we might call effective action.
Yeah.
So a lot of, friction and a lot of stuff happening, but very little actually getting done. Uh, and then we go to the right of that. That's quadrant two. That's what I call the achiever. I make life happen in quadrant two. Now there's a lot of doing, but it's what we might call effective action, because these are the people, the executives and the business owners, who build something. And specifically the ones who are good at it, who are successful, are really good at taking action. But it's probably not, if you're making these strict lines between the quadrants, it's probably not a lot from being. It's just, so quadrant one is an unhealthy ego,
Mm.
and quadrant two is a functional or a healthy ego, but still both egos, so still both lots of doing.
Yeah.
And then quadrant three, straight up, is life happens through me. So now we're co-creating, and now is where we get into that space, of being and doing, co-creation. I'm still me. I'm still actively participating and guiding the process, but there's some other wisdom coming through me, you know, and there's a presence that allows me to be here while I'm doing whatever I'm doing. And then there's quadrant four, which is I am life, the sage, something like that. And that's an interesting group. It's really more, it's like, if you think of it like percentages, quadrant one is like, we just say for the sake of this, 0% being. Quadrant two
Mm.
is 25% being. Quadrant three is 50%. And quadrant four is 100%, something like that.
Look who's here. It's
It's
Bobby
Bobby
Kahn.
Connell.
That was really perfect timing because Fred was describing the quadrants and you came in
I was talking
right
shit
before.
about you. No, I
I,
didn't say that.
I got a little of quadrant 3 and 4, so my mind is like, oh, tell me about 1 and 2.
Go back and watch the replay. Hi,
Yeah,
Rosalie.
exactly. Thank God it's a replay.
Thank God.
Well,
Like that a replay. I could probably use that from time to time too.
yeah. Sometimes I go back and watch us and listen to us, and I love that
Mm.
because I actually find there's a lot of wisdom in here. I love that, and I was kind of going, well, for all the super visual people that can actually see that in their minds, like the different quadrants, that's
Mhm.
really cool. Otherwise, I, didn't bring up a whiteboard or anything like that. Anybody who has a piece of paper, even if you're watching the replay, grab a piece of paper and a pen. If that helps you, write it down and then put it up somewhere. Because it might be really, really helpful to look at it that way.
Yeah, that's a great, because those frames are really useful just to ask yourself, how am I doing? Where am I at? Oh boy, that was really victimy the way I responded to that person. Not like a judgment, not like something wrong, just like, wow, what am I giving my power to? Because I'm obviously not feeling like I have any power in this situation, you know? And then quadrant 2, maybe you feel powerful, but maybe it feels a little mechanical, because it's ego. It's always like this agenda that something has to happen. Uh, Thank you, Rosalie.
Thank you,
Uh,
Rosalie.
yeah, we appreciate you, Rosalie. And so then in quadrant 3, that deeper sense of being begins to show up. And so you can see that, like, ask yourself, where am I coming from in these, whatever's happening in life. So it's useful.
Yeah.
Presence and performance, Bobby.
Yeah, I don't know if this is where your quadrants were going, but as I was thinking about this as a topic, I in my mind I can think of times that I am performing as a performer and it feels very mechanical, but I know I've got a script to read and I'm wanting to read it as enthusiastically as I possibly can. And then there's and that's like that word performative. It was very performative, which I'm not even sure I completely understand that word, but that's sort of what's coming to mind there. And then there's performing, like from the standpoint of being in flow and, just melting into the performance of whatever it is that we're doing. And, two very different experiences. Both kind of have an aspect of presence, but it feels different. I mean, the first one does, because you have to keep track of where are you and are you on the script right, and are you using your emotion carefully to move the audience. But it feels very out of the experience, kind of like I'm attempting to manipulate the experience from outside the sphere or something like that.
Can I play with you
yes.
real quick? Sorry.
No, go ahead.
All right. Is it okay if I play with you a little bit, Bobby?
Yes.
Because when I hear you say that about the performance, like performative side of reading the script, I hear an assumption that if I don't perform it, it won't be emotive enough. Like I have to perform it in order to bring forth the emotion, instead of the emotion will come from the actual reading of the script. Does that make sense? That's what was going on that's what I was understanding as I heard you.
Yeah. I'm probably like in my I recently, when I have, like, even these things, or when I'm speaking in public, I'm making a concerted effort to speak more from the heart and less have less preparation, and just have the intention that I get more into flow and let the message that wants to come out of me come out of me. but now it's like I used to be very mechanical and, craft every little bit of my performance in my head. I knew where I would be standing on the stage and all of that. And I've completely let it go. And now I'm sort of thinking that maybe bringing a little bit of an aspect of that back may be indicated, or it feels like it's being almost requested. It's like, okay, you've got this other way of doing things now bring a little bit more of it back into it. Sort of what it feels like.
Nothing wrong. Go ahead, finish up. Well, I just say I don't think there's anything wrong. I think the idea, something that I'm really not very good at, is the preparing, And when I prepare, like I've tried to do that in the past, it never feels natural, you know. And of course the fear is that if you wing it, that you might forget something, you may not cover everything that you want to cover. But to me, it just feels much more natural to do it that way, and I rarely, like, especially in coaching or someplace, rarely know what's going to come out of my mouth until I say it, and that, I don't even know if it works or doesn't work, honestly, but it seems to be what I can do. I don't do the preparation thing very well.
Mm. And I'm curious. To me, and I mean, please correct me if I'm wrong. To me, you've done the preparation in so many ways already. I mean, how many books have you read? How many years have you studied?
Well, that stuff
So
I
it's
think is
like
true.
in
Yeah,
you.
but that's true for everyone in their own way, right? Everyone's lived their life, and but I get what you're
Yes.
saying.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
And some people have prepared a lot, and some people kind of wing it. We had this thing in, for those of you who don't know, I'm also a singing teacher and a music therapist. And the idea of singing, when people would sing a song and they'd want to improvise on the song, there's a big difference between you actually know the song and then you improvise on the song, or you
Yeah.
just improvise based on a little part of the song. And then it's like people get lost or it becomes something else when you're actually not building on the song on which you're improvising, right? So there's this winging it. And so this is interesting for me in this discussion of performance. It is, what are you bringing? Like, are you actually not prepared in order to avoid? And then you put yourself in a situation where you become performative because you have nothing on which to draw, or at least not enough.
And maybe that's good.
Yeah, it can be, absolutely.
Right.
Again, depending on the situation, of course. Because I mean,
Someone
how
says,
prepared could you possibly be?
someone says to you, okay, Miriam, tomorrow I need you to deliver a lecture on, I don't know, 13th century architecture.
I was going to say astrophysics. Yeah,
Yeah,
same
right.
thing.
Might as well be.
Nothing, honey. Yeah.
Yeah, right. But so you're probably not going to wing it, you might, like, depending on the nature of it, be able to bring your own special flavor to it. Or you might just, like, read a bunch of points that you learned the night before. So it depends,
Yeah.
and all might serve their purpose.
And that's kind of it, isn't it? Like there's, the way I usually put it is there's no such thing as right and wrong, which means that everything's right.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
whatever is.
Yeah.
And we can still set ourselves up to fail, looking at this sort of performative thing where, okay, maybe I do have to do a presentation on, what did I say, astrophysics or 13th century, whatever it was, and I don't prepare or prepare enough. Maybe I am in the, I have to perform and I can't do it, so I give up ahead of time kind of doing. And so I end up not doing, and then I end up in a situation of perhaps incredible discomfort or create failure or whatever, having sort of set it up that way, making myself unable to perform, whether it be flow or whatever. it's kind of like giving up ahead of time because I didn't think I would be able to perform well enough. I set my sights on some sort of level of performance that I didn't think I would be able to attain.
Mhm.
So I give up ahead of time.
Or
That
that was
kind of
thrust
picture.
upon you.
Yeah, I mean, yeah. But it's just sort of that thought process around performance. We're executing something where it's like, oh, well, I won't be able to do that. So I make sure I won't be able to do that. That kind of thought process that comes into it, if that makes any sense. That doesn't really have, I'm not sure what quadrant I'd put it in, but there's not a lot of being in there.
Well, quadrant one is the least empowered.
Yeah,
So
I
if
would
you
put it
just
probably
don't
there.
think you can do it and you don't even try, because
Mm,
that's, like I think of the quadrants, if you start all the way here to the left, like in quadrant one, you could go all the way to the edge of quadrant one. And so it becomes like, you get less and more empowered as you go to the right until you finally cross that line.
It's like a continuum.
Continuum, exactly, not just four choices, basically infinite choices. But so, if you're really to the far left, you might really be in that place of, I'm not even going to try. I don't have whatever it takes. I'm not the guy, you know. And but as you get further, there's variations on that you might experience.
mm, mm.
And then once you hit crossover into quadrant two is when you say, fuck it, I'm doing it. I'm just going to do it, you know.
Yep. So Rosalie brought up a point about losing the performance.
Yeah, I thought that was an interesting point, actually.
Yeah.
That like somehow we almost like create this experience to put us in that place of embodiment, as she puts it.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that because it's truly trusting life, and trusting life as it's happening through you. That whatever happens, this is what's next. I was sitting next to someone at a birthday party one time, and I didn't really know this person, but she's telling me her whole life story and the kind of sad version where nothing ever works out. Um, and there was a lot of like self judgment and blaming herself, and I just never could seem to get my shit together, kind of thing. And um, what I answered, which I didn't ever think about until I said it, like I was saying before, I said, it fascinates me that people have this story that they can get life wrong, right? It's like, how do you know you're getting life wrong? You could know that you're not getting what you want or what you think you want. But as far as I can tell, we just have choices. We make choices and we have consequences of those choices. And if those consequences are not what you want, the outcomes that you're getting, then you should probably make different choices. But that's kind of what I'm taking out of Rosalie's comment.
Yeah. I love that.
I do too. Particularly, I just stopped to write it down that people have a story that we tell ourselves that we can get life wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Man, there is like, it feels like if we simply embody that one realization, a lot of stuff
Easier
feels
said
like
than
it's
done. I
just going to
agree.
dissolve.
Yeah. Well, right, because how much resistance does it create?
Yeah.
It's hard. It's hard. I mean, it's hard on myself when I think I'm getting it wrong, and there's a whole like rabbit hole that can take me down.
Yeah.
Once I think I'm getting it wrong, well, there's a reason I'm getting it wrong. It's because this is true about me. That I'm not smart enough, or whatever. And there's just a whole life that creates.
Which gives rise to the need to perform.
There you go. Thank you for reeling us back in, Miriam.
I saw a TED talk over the weekend. There's a guy, Simon Sinek,
Oh, yeah.
He has Begin with Why and a lot of very interesting things on leadership. And he was talking about the fact that in game theory, there's the concept of a finite game, which is like football or baseball, where there's a specific set of rules and a players, an objective and a time frame, and it's over. Then there are infinite games that are played. That's parenting, marriage, the Cold War. The rules are changing, the players are changing all the time. Different people have different rules. And the object of the game is to merely keep the game going. And to me, it sounds like your statement, Fred, of the story that we tell ourselves is an indication that we are attempting to play the infinite game of life by a finite set of rules, believing that we can win, that the game of life is something we can win, or we can win marriage.
Or worse, that we can lose. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's brilliant.
It is.
I see why. I mean, that's kind of programmed into us, isn't it?
Yeah.
This idea.
Conditioned, I think. It's conditioned. Yeah.
And it's, I always think that one of the things that school does to us, like the dirty trick that schooling plays on us, is that it teaches us, conditions us that the answer is more important than the question. Right? Like the whole point of the question is just to get to the answer.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of pressure. Like, great, if the question is what's the capital of Wisconsin, great, just give the answer or don't know the answer. But if the question is, what do you want out of life, or what really matters to you, or which should be the kind of questions they're asking in school, and they probably don't, at least not when I was there. That those questions, but you see, when I do this, like with a client, I used to do this all the time. Somebody would sit down, and just to it's because it's provocative, I would say, so what do you want? And people would get really uptight about that, because we're taught that we have to have the answer. The answer is all that matters. And when we don't have the answer, it's like, and then they do usually one of two things. Either they press play on the tape recorder and they just start saying stuff that well, I'd like to travel, and nothing wrong with that, but you could just tell there's no aliveness to it when they say it. Or they get really stressed out and they think they should know. And this non-performative thing that we're talking about, what's the word for non-performative? Being?
Being, yeah, let's do that.
Could be.
Yeah. But because why not just be in that space of not knowing? So if you say, what do you want? And the person goes, I don't know. That's a great question. What do I want? And just to be able to sit in that and just see what arises. And if nothing arises, that's okay too. You say, nothing's coming to me right now, but you stay open. And maybe it comes in 5 minutes, who knows? But there's just so much aliveness there. And that just knowing in advance or feeling like you have to know, it just feels performative.
Yeah. As if there's a right answer, but like a right answer for the person you're sitting with. Like I'll get that in sessions to ask a question, and they want to know what I want them to answer. Like they want to know, they have what they get. People can get really nervous, like really, really nervous, because they think they have to give me the right answer so that then they'll be safe. Like they make it into a completely different situation than what it actually is. As if my answer is supposed to be their answer. Yeah. It's like, oh, I don't care about what I think for my life. That's mine, right? I'm curious about what you want from yours. And even sometimes the mere thought of that, like having an independent idea, an independent response, can be overwhelming. And then the need to perform feels even stronger. And they'll be grasping it. Yeah, but there must be a right answer. There must be something you want me to say.
Yeah.
You must have the right answer so that I'll feel better. And I'm like, no, I can't have your right answer.
Yeah. And that's just a stage of development,
Yeah.
to put all of your power outside of yourself to an authority, to a religious figure, to whatever it
Mhm.
might be, to the guru. Um, it's just a stage, because ultimately I think it moves more and more towards trusting something in ourselves.
Mhm.
But you could see, I mean, I'm just thinking about how wounded we can be and how hard it can be to trust that, you know, um, and to
And it's
really
never too
feel
late
like
to start practicing. Sorry.
yeah, and now is as good a time as any.
Yeah.
I mean, we could really have been taught that stuff, we can't trust that knowing, and, some people might be the opposite, they'll give you the answer, right here it is, boom, like no, no curiosity, just let me tell you how life is. And, you know, that's just another way we defend ourselves.
Absolutely. It's like I know what's right and I figured it all out, so you need to listen to me. And
Yeah,
it's all
right,
performance, actually. And I
right.
was just thinking of, as you were speaking, that sort of very typical kind of conversation that is like, what do you want for dinner? I don't know. What do you want for dinner? Or where do you want to go for dinner? Where do you want to go? And it goes back and forth like a ping pong game. It can go on forever. And I've had these kind of conversations with my significant other where it's like, well, I need to know what you want, what kind of food you want to eat, so that I'll know what I can choose. And I'm like, I didn't ask you what I wanted. I asked you what you wanted, right? But that kind of conversation becomes uh, and it's very outer focused, as you mentioned, right? It's well, whatever you want or whatever you want. And yeah.
But some people don't even know until like they hear a list of choices. That's me
Yeah.
sometimes, like as soon as you go, well, how about Indian? I'd be like, yeah, Indian sounds good, you know, but somehow I have to hear it first, and then I can, But the funny part is, if I said Indian, like if I went, how about Indian? I'd still be able to choose, but it would be less compelling than if I heard someone else say it.
Hmm.
Hmm.
I think it's possible to say Indian and not even want Indian, but just kind of bring it into the space.
Right?
Well, there's Indian, there's Chinese there, like, and then see what happens. Right? It's like, I
Now
don't want
you're
any
just
of those, but I'll.
brainstorming.
Right, right. No bad ideas.
I
Ah,
Here's an interesting thing on conditioning. I think I shared with you guys that I was trying an experiment on the way that I charge. And I was wanting to introduce kind of a sliding scale. I typically gave away like a free discovery session that it was very clear that people were not going to be expected to pay for. And instead, what I did was I just started doing the first session free. And I would say my business is built on a pay it forward basis. And your first session is free. It's already been paid for by somebody else. If you decide to make a contribution, then you'll be paying for somebody else's session, and sit and decide and see what you think it's worth. And to me, in my head, it sounded like, wow, this is going to revolutionize the way that we do things. But so far, at least the way that I am explaining it, people hate it. They hate that I'm asking them to evaluate the session and put a monetary price on it. And in fact, I was having trouble with it. So then I started to say, when I used to charge for this, the typical first session would run X. And I'm
Mm-hmm.
just giving you that as sort of a frame of reference. And what happened was we'd have this conversation and people would show up to the first session with the amount of money in cash. That was the behavior that conversation got. It's like somehow I manifested, pay me under the table in cash type of a modality. and it was just uncomfortable for people.
You have to stop having these conversations in dark alleys, Bobby.
It's winter in Alaska. All of our alleys are dark this time of year.
The hypnotist is programming people's minds in the
That's
wrong
right.
way. I'm loving this.
In the weirdest way. Yeah, it is. And on, like, in my journey of, once upon a time, I was like the ultra preparer and, you know, scripting down to the finest level. But then I realized that, you know, I could sit in a studio and create what I thought was an awesome show, but 5 iterations in, the performance was going to be completely different based on the feedback that I got, where, you know, oohs and ahs that I didn't really expect to get them there. And then, you know, crickets where I was expecting thunderous applause. So everything gets adjusted. So then I just stopped preparing less and less and less. And, you know, ultimately, a couple of my things have been like open mastermind sessions or R&D, saying, here's my idea. I have no idea how to accomplish it. I'm looking to get for your feedback. What do you think? And we actually do like a brainstorming session. So weird ways to, like, for me, to get even more present in the moment and with the message than I previously was, like, vastly overthinking.
I mean, it's fun to shake things up.
Yeah.
And just see where, you know, I mean, again, what's at stake? If like you have to remember, like, the nuclear codes that, like, you know, the president carries in a briefcase, you know, may not be the time to ad lib, but you know, I think most of our daily encounters are not that high stakes, you know, so have fun. Yes, watching improvisation is the whole thing too. Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, you know, it's interesting. So I went with my lovely wife to a live show yesterday, a performance of what's it called? In the Heights by Lin-Manuel Miranda. And beautiful show. You know, it's a musical. It's like a Broadway show here in, you know, our little local theater. And you know, so there's this possibility of doing a scripted performance, and they're telling you what to say and where to stand, and, you know, to even what your face should look like, whatever. And still, can you make that real and spontaneous? Isn't that what the best actors do? Is you still, so there's something like a presence or a being that creates that experience within these parameters. Okay, these are the words you're going to say, this is where you're going to stand, you know, and still make it seem real and alive and spontaneous. So I think that there's something, you know, what is that natural spontaneity and natural curiosity that we just bring to everything, potentially everything.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You have me thinking of Robin Williams.
Yeah.
In, I believe it was, I think it was Good Will Hunting, actually.
That, or the one Good Morning Vietnam, when he did the radio thing.
No, I mean, yes. But I was thinking of a particular scene. I'm seeing Matt Damon, so I'm thinking it's Good Will Hunting.
Yeah, that's Good Will Hunting.
And because he wasn't in Dead Poets Society. And where Robin Williams, his character, comes to the door, he gets a message, and then he has to respond. Now, of course, there's a script. And then what they decided to do, Matt Damon was directing, and he said he just let the camera roll. And Robin Williams came out and did a response to that message 60, I think it was 60 times. And every single time it was different. And what I love about that, in the interest of our topic about performance, is this idea that just be with it and you can't make a mistake. Like nothing is wrong. All of those, there's value in every one of those 60 examples. And how, as you were talking, Fred, I was thinking about how children play. It's not scripted, unless it is, but I mean, it's not scripted. They run out of the house full speed, and they're Indians and cowboys and whatever they are, and jumping off of buildings and being the neighborhood detective and all of these things that they just, and they're so that thing. They're not pretending to be the thing. They are the thing, right? And they feel the power and all of that. And the training we get to sort of put that aside, and the wonderful opportunity as these actors, for example, to bring it in. Like, you can't, there's no wrong. Just improvise it. Just let it pour out of you. And I think that's that kind of training for people who are so conditioned to need the right answer, to be in performance. It's so valuable. You brought up the word spontaneity, because it can awaken our natural spontaneity, our natural flexibility, our natural vitality, where we are just being rather than performing. Like, having to be is not the same as being, if that makes sense.
Mm.
Mm. Yeah. Kind of almost the idea of spending the time to prepare, but then knowing it so well that you have the confidence to release yourself in the moment and let it go. I did that work with the some of the opera singers earlier in the year, and one thing that stunned me about them is the amount of preparation. I mean, they were like, for 60 days, they were preparing so that they could nail these 4 performances over a weekend. And the amount of preparation that went into it was stunning. But my sense is so that they could just release themselves so fully and surrender to the moment. And that is different. I mean, you would certainly over prepare for if you were going to go do improv playing with a bunch of comedians. Having your full spontaneity lit up would be the best way to have your neurology aligned. Whereas, if you're doing something like a performance, having the best peak performance hardwired into your neurology, and then just being able to release into that moment. It's like the same thing. It's the same surrender, sort of, but coming at it from completely different angles, it feels like.
Well, I think that being prepared, again, depending on what you're doing, if I'm going to be, in the Heights yesterday, and I just show up, the day of the show, and I haven't read the scripts and I haven't been to any of the rehearsals, I'm just going to wing it. Well, that's probably not what people are paying for, So there's absolutely a place where all that preparation, and yes, then you can relax and something else can come through. But the preparation creates like the structure that allows you to relax. So, I think it's beautiful, just like what you're saying. And it's possible. I mean, maybe, Bobby, you could say more about this, that the people doing all that preparation for the opera, they can get so caught in the doing, right? Okay, I got my lines, I'm practicing, that you forget that all of that is so you can relax.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, what was your experience?
Well, exactly that. The main person the main 2 that I was working with were these were both big kind of breaks for them. You know, it was like the next phase of their career was potentially about to begin unfolding. So they were very into the mechanics of it, and the thought that it had to be perfect. And with the main one that I was working with, I kind of start with the question like you did, Fred, you know, what do you want it to be like? How do you want it to be different? Mm-hmm. And she said, I want to be completely out of my head. And so everything that we designed, like I did stuff before, like getting her in touch with her love of music and performance, and then like bypassed her, went out to the audience, and she experienced being an audience member and receiving her best performance and connecting her heart. So like the whole sequence was basically to get her head and her mechanics out of the picture, and it was all about getting into flow. However, you know, I had the luxury of, they had already done the 60 days, and I was working with them the last 3 or 4 days before dress rehearsal. So, I mean, they had been doing all of the peak stuff, really, really diving into it. Here's a question for you, Miriam, because this is your arena. When you're practicing, like for a new difficult piece, when a singer is practicing, like how much of the prep as they're getting in, are they mentally measuring themselves against like a mental picture of perfection, versus how much are they just exploring the music and getting into the flow? And does that make a difference to you, which approach they might take?
Yeah, that's a good question. Thank you. So it's different for everyone. I mean, there are many reasons for that. There may be a very high level of performance anxiety in a person, so their preparation will be different from a person who has no performance anxiety and can really experience the music and go straight to the expression and that sort of thing. What tends to be the case sort of generally, if we take a person who is learning a brand new piece, it takes about 3 months generally for the person to be able to embody the piece, make it theirs, know it as theirs, without having to think, right? It just flows. That can be a lot longer for a person who has a lot of performance anxiety, because they'll be very focused on every minute detail. A person who doesn't have performance anxiety can still be hyper focused on every minute detail. It'll be a completely different experience and a different reasoning behind it. But the idea is, generally speaking, the performance will flow more from the being with it than the doing of it after about 3 months of practice of it, so that you're not still trying to memorize and you have to remember the text and all of this sort of thing. So the variation will be there. Also, the difference will be, is this my natural way of expressing something? Am I singing country when I normally sing rock or something? So it's like, it's not really my voice. My body isn't used to that sort of way of singing, so that I have to change something in myself. It's like learning a different dance routine or learning a different weightlifting routine. Your body needs time to get used to it. Your voice may not work in that way habitually, and then they're sort of learning the new habits again. So there are lots of factors that come in. So this is my way of answering your question as well as I can. But there is that sort of time range that is about the same as far as knowing the material well enough. Did that help at all?
Mm-hmm. Very much.
You know, I don't know if I've even mentioned this before, but for the past 10 years since I'm here in Austin, I've been doing this very unique martial art called Sistema. Have I mentioned this before?
Yeah.
Russian martial art. But what's interesting about it is that there are no techniques. So there are four principles, and that's what the whole thing is based on. So the principles are, proper breathing, which of course is really natural full breath, but most people don't really understand what breathing is. And the second is relaxation. And so again, we're talking about a level of relaxation that most people don't even imagine is possible. Of course, it's a process like anything. And the third is structure, so that you're aligned, you're balanced, even your relationship to your opponent, is part of structure. And so if you're breathing and you relax and you're properly aligned, the fourth principle is natural movement. And you just move. You meet that moment, in whatever way spontaneously arises. And I think it's brilliant, incidentally, that they put these other things, breathing and relaxing, first. What did you say about?
Yeah, I love that they're first. Yeah,
because that's what allows that spontaneity. And most people, like we're talking about all this pressure that people feel, it's because they're probably not relaxed and they're not breathing, and so they feel all this internal pressure. And that, so it's good to have basics. You take a breath, try and relax, and then see how it goes. But it's fascinating. I think system is kind of like contact improv with knives, and it's so that it's like it's a very fascinating game to play. The other day we actually had class, and the teacher, Gene, who's this really interesting guy, he says, "Okay, everybody lie on the floor," and we spent probably 20 or 25 minutes of a 1 hour class doing various breathing exercises designed to connect to the body and relax and all this stuff. And part of me was like, when are we going to get on with the class? Like I want to do the drills. I like doing partner stuff, and I shared this at the end. I was so much better when we finally got up to do stuff than I ever would have been if we just started from there. So, again, this is a little bit like preparation again. There's preparation that allows you to be, to kind of merge into the moment in any way that you need to. It's fun though. It's a very fun system. There's a lot of fun.
I'm going to dive in. It's really funny because every time you talk about it, I'm like, oh, I want to try that.
Yeah.
I am, as I understand it, one of the few people who remembers what it was like to be like born and not have experience, like that whole just consciousness thing. And even now, as I say it, it shows up. It is so pure being. And what's happening is, as we're talking about improvisation and spontaneity, I notice my attention going to that experience of newly born, of pure consciousness, of not having conscious like reference points to anything. And then the experience of improvisation, where there are basically always reference points because you improvise on something. And I was thinking about the program Whose Line Is It Anyway? Have you ever seen that?
Oh, I love that show.
Hilarious. And without all of the reference points that they have, how could they possibly do a lot of what they do, which still in many respects flows through them, sometimes more, sometimes less.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, even like the Bachelor game where they have to be the dates, and then they're told, okay, you're a gorilla doing the la 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 or whatever, or you're a this or you're that. You have to know what a gorilla is. So there's the underlying experience, having been in the world, having that preparation without even necessarily realizing it's preparation. It's like when kids play and they're a cowboy well, what's a cowboy? You have to have some reference point in order to be a cowboy. And the difference for me as I sit with the experience of no reference, no thought, no words, none of that.
That's what we're calling quadrant 4.
Yeah, I think because it's all, it feels like, it is really difficult to describe what it feels like because it's so pure. And in that, noticing how it becomes a kind of curiosity, like seeing somebody's face and then just being with the face. There is nothing going on, there's just a face. And then starting to, as we start, you know how, well, you all have kids, right? And you get this, what's that? Right? There becomes a curiosity, what's that? And then feet. And I can feel my feet, but I can't see them yet, kind of thing. And then it's like, oh, I can push with these feet. So there's this being that is so just pure consciousness. And then there's the noticing and then becoming curious about, and then something happens from there. And I just noticed as I listened to you, gentlemen, this curiosity around the improvisation, the being from improvisation, the non-performing performing that is improvisation, if that makes any sense at all, and the non-performing at all, at least my experience of it, in the being that is pure.
Just arising.
Yeah.
I love that word, like it occurred to me before, and I mean, stop me if it gets too like out there. I know you're never going to stop me anyway.
No, we love you, Fred.
But there is just consciousness. I mean, and that's a verifiable thing, at least via your experience, which is the only thing really worth trusting at the end of the day. Meaning, I can tell you that there's like this background space called consciousness, or you can just notice in this moment, I am aware. Okay. And so consciousness, therefore, awareness, consciousness, same thing, is self-evidently true. As opposed to some theory that I try and teach you. So that's just the first kind of cool thing about consciousness, is that it's already here, and it's verifiable through direct experience. So then we begin to, if we can, we little by little can like tease apart consciousness as just this background beingness, and then everything that arises within that space, which is everything, it's me speaking right now. It's everything in this room. It's literally arising within that space of consciousness. And so life is always improv, I guess. It's just always unfolding that way. And even the stuff that we think was performed or not, not very alive, and all the stuff we've been talking about, guess what? That's just arising out of nothing also, and your thoughts about it, that it wasn't very good, that's arising out of nothing. It's there's just no place. It's turtles all the way down. There's just no place where it's not arising from nothing. Now, that's not to discredit anything that we just spent the last hour talking about, because there does seem to be an in the world experience of aliveness or not aliveness, relatively speaking. But I think it's also good to sometimes just play in the absolute and recognize, yeah, it's all just, like life playing itself. And whatever happens, in the truest sense of the word, I had nothing to do with it because I'm just part of the happening, and that's again like quadrant 4, like Miriam is pointing to. It's just nothing but life unfolding, and we can pretend, which is a fun game, to like that we're running some part of the show, that seems like, why not? Let's play that game for a while, 80 years or so. Um, and currently, for me, it's looking like a lot of fun to let go of a little bit of that need to control it and just trust. I'm not ready to completely just become a leaf in the ocean, which is again quadrant 4, but I'm very interested in like the level, like what shows up in that co-creative space in quadrant 3. So I'm just really fascinated by like how life can just arise within me without me having to do anything. And there's lots of doing that happens anyway.
I've been playing with the idea of a continuum of, at one tension, at one end, pure attention, like us so incredibly focused that our mind is full of just one thing. People talk about that on psilocybin trips, that they'll see an anthill and they'll spend 90 minutes with that anthill and just mentally become part of the anthill. And then at the opposite end of the continuum is awareness. And I've been thinking of awareness as completely relaxed and released attention, and attention as completely focused and concentrated awareness. And just in my meditation, I kind of do like a little infinity breath loop, just seeing myself surfing from awareness to attention and back again, and just realizing that we can be anywhere we want to be on that spectrum at any moment. And actually, for me, I'm noticing that when I find myself getting frustrated, let's say, a whisper of wisdom arising within me. So then the question becomes, what is that telling me? And often, if it's frustration, it's telling me that I've become very attached to life unfolding in one very specific way. And I just release that. It's almost like I'm zooming out emotionally, and not always. Sometimes I get very stuck in it, but sometimes just a little bit is just enough to like get the flow going again. And it's it's almost like a moving meditation. Whenever, and I don't do it all the time. I make no effort to do it at all, but more and more it's just popping up and saying, focus a little bit more or pull out a little. And it's interesting how elegantly sometimes those adjustments are sort of presenting themselves. It's what it feels like, if that doesn't sound too crazy.
Totally
I guess that's being the leaf in the river of life.
Yeah, one of my favorite movie scenes is in the third, I believe it's the third Indiana Jones movie, the one with Sean Connery as his dad. And it's at the very end of the movie, and the Nazis, have got them, and they want to force Indiana Jones to go get the Holy Grail for them. And he says, I'll never put the Grail in Nazi hands. And so they shot his dad in the belly, if you remember, Sean Connery. And he says, well, the Grail has healing powers, so if you want to save your dad, go get the Grail. So off he goes, and he's got to go through these series of impossible puzzles that are life and death, all these booby trap passageways. And in the movie, his dad, apparently there's some scripture that's associated with this, solving these puzzles. And his dad and he are like having the same thoughts at the same time, and they're quoting. But so there's this one scene where there's a big chasm that he has to cross, and it's way too far to jump, even for Indiana Jones. And so the phrase that keeps coming to mind is something about leap of faith. Oh no, it's step and the path will appear. Okay, which is basically what we've been saying all this time. And so there's this moment when he just literally steps out onto the abyss, and his foot lands boom, on solid ground. And then you realize like the camera shifts and you can see that there was always a path there, but you couldn't see it because it kind of blended into the background, some kind of optical illusion. But I always loved that scene because the idea that you step and somehow the path will be there, So
Yeah. I
on
love
that
that.
note.
I love that. And it reminds me of dreams I've had, just to sort of throw that into the mix,
Mm,
where I'm running to catch, like I'm running. Sometimes it's to catch a train, for example. But the train station or the subway or whatever it is down here, and I'm running on the platform up here.
mm,
And as I get closer to the train, all of a sudden I'm terrified because the train's down there and I'm up here. From where I am, I can't see that there's a flight of stairs until I get to the very edge of the stairs, and then I can see. And then
mm,
my fear is just gone, right?
Hmm.
And it's that sort of uh how it's so illustrative of how I sometimes am in the world and less and less and less. This sort of, if I can't see it, it's kind of like when we talk about performance as well, the performative and the executive. It's the needing to control. So I'm performative and then just executing from being, like just taking action from this inner arising, for example, that is not control. We can't control much anyway, but it's sort of that being with, and how uh, this sort of understanding I need to control this just in a split second is there, and then in a split second it's gone because I see what I need to see. And it's another illustration of what you were talking about, Fred. It's like it was always there, I just couldn't see it.
yeah.
And how it's possible to go through life. Like people talk about having faith, and I don't know if faith is the right word, but it's like going through life with the answer is there. The solution is there. Just because I can't see it doesn't mean it isn't there. And so
Mhm.
sometimes it's like actually taking the step and
Byron
then
Katie has this beautiful story of right after she had this profound awakening. Byron Katie is an author and teacher. Um, and so she was like so profoundly in the present that, like, at one point they said to her, we need you to go to the store. Like, there's a van in the parking lot. Here are the keys. Go take the van to the store and pick up whatever and bring it back. And she couldn't conceive of future where the van existed, you know? So she said, I'd like walk into the parking lot and like magic, this van would appear, and I reached into my pocket and like magic, there were the keys. And that was her life. It was just like this magical moment. And again, that's not easy to live that way. You know, it's not easy to live that way and have a job and pay taxes and, have to eat food to take care of your body. Uh, that's again what I would call quadrant 4. And I think people like that, they serve an incredibly important role on this planet. And generally speaking, deserve to have handlers and people saying, okay, here's what we're going to do now. And here's your breakfast. And you could just be in being. A friend of mine said recently, we were talking about something, it was like political or something, and maybe it was AI, how AI is, it's taking over some people's jobs. Amazon just laid off 10,000 people, etc. And my friend, very casually, like it was just the most obvious thing, he said, we should pay those people to meditate. We should just, and that should be a job that people have. They should just be paid a living wage to just sit in meditation all day.
Wow.
Hmm.
I'll tell you what I love about that. I practice meditation and I practice TM, Transcendental Meditation. I've been doing it since 1988. And Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who is the one who brought it to the West, used to say, if we can get 1% of the population meditating at the same time, all of the ills of society will simply dissolve. And that became known as the Maharishi effect. And in 1994, I think it might have been 1993, the organization, the TM organization, did a thing in Washington, D.C. And over, I think it was 6 or 8 weeks, I don't remember exactly, but there were thousands of meditators that flew into DC.
Well, they were in shifts.
Yeah, and
They
I
had to
was
keep
I
going.
did 2 weeks of a shift out of the 6, and during that time, like the crime statistics
Right.
dropped by almost a quarter. It was like low 20s, about 4% of a crime. And man, I haven't thought about that in a long time, but that's very interesting.
Yeah. Unexplainable by any other means, you know,
Yeah.
statistically. It could
Yeah.
not have happened on its own.
Mm.
Yeah, I thought that, I love that. And thank you, Bobby, for your participation in that.
Oh, it was, yeah, it's a big thing in my life. It was very profound to be a part of that.
Totally. And the beautiful thing about that is it's still going on, meaning whatever frequencies you send out into the universe are still out there, still expanding. So
Yeah.
Well, gentlemen, we are a little
Here we
bit
are.
over our hour. So it's time to say adieu. Does anybody have anything they would like anybody else to know about? You got anything on offer, anything planned that you'd like to share?
I'll share. I have as a result of this conversation, I'm going to try an experiment. And it came from hiking with new partners this summer that I'd never hiked with before, that I found hiked a little bit more quickly than I was comfortable doing. And it took me a long time. I was like out of breath and I was getting tired. And finally, at one point, I said, I need us to slow down like half a step. And we did that. And all of a sudden, I could breathe and I could talk while I walked without having to stop and pause. And just our conversation today has me trying an experiment, and it has to do with that thing that you ended with, Fred, the steps rising to meet us on our path. I'm going to just begin my own personal exploration, and I'll report, back next time that we do it, how it went. And maybe I'll make an entry or two on the Presence Posse. When I feel frustrated, angry, anxious, any condition that I have been, or any emotion that I've been conditioned to perceive as negative, I'm going to see about just slowing down life a little bit to see if I can come in more sync. I'm going to experiment with the philosophy that frustration arises when I'm pushing life to conform to my desires. And I'm going to see if I can be a little bit more in quadrant 4. So if that sounds like fun, join me and make comments. I'll post in the Presence Posse and let me know. Let us all know what your experience is.
That's a super fun game.
Well.
That sounds great.
That's a really fun game, Bobby.
Yeah, cool.
Fred, you got it? You got something?
No, I do not. Actually, okay, well, that's maybe I do. Because I was just working on this before. I'm starting a very brief newsletter form. I'll probably post it repeated places, like everything from email to LinkedIn, maybe Facebook. And it's going to be like what I'm currently calling flow notes, just little 200-300 word like ticklers about something kind of what we talk about here or anything along those lines. You are, Bobby. And so if anybody's interested in that, tag me on Facebook or something, and I'll eventually see it. I don't know. Eventually, I'll get on Facebook and look, and I'll add you to you if you have a specific, like you'd like it on email or Facebook, whatever. Let me know, and I'll see if I can include you in that, because I'd like to, create something where some of these ideas can be shared in little bite-sized pieces that we can begin to integrate. So, to be continued.
That sounds really
How about you, Miriam?
good.
What do you have to share?
I clicked on something and then I couldn't figure out what I did. I thank you for asking. I have what I call an infinite possibilities session. And what I do is I bring you into a quite powerful, full sensory experience. So it's at the level of the whole being and what I call being in action. So it's almost like an invitation to do what we often talk about. It's being present to what is, taking you away from your perceived reality and who you think you are, and toward and into another possibility. And of course, an infinite possibility of what reality is for you and who you really are.
Mm-hmm.
So you are welcome to contact me at this contact information here if you would like a session like that.
And who wouldn't like a session like that?
I would say there are people who have come to me with problems they've had for decades, and in 10 minutes they don't have that problem anymore. So sometimes it can be really fast. I would like to thank, especially Rosalie, thank you for all your comments. We appreciate all of the, you're making us better, of course. And everybody else who's watching, of course, let us know if you're watching the replay, and you're welcome to ask us questions afterwards, and we will get back to you. Thank you for participating in today's talk, and we will be back hopefully in 2 weeks. We'll let you know, so keep an eye out for our page in our group for information on our next talk and what our next topic is. Thanks again, and of course, a special thanks always to Bobby and Fred. I love being with you guys, and I will thank myself as well.
Thank you.
Indeed.
Take care, everyone. See you next time.
Bye.